Just kidding. We're back, however, at it with our free 6-month self-coaching program for the late diagnosed neurodiverse woman who is bone tired of treating their nervous system like a problem to solve and their ADHD like a personality flaw to overcome. We are in month 3, and if you've been here from the beginning, you already know what we've covered. Month 1 was about nervous system regulation as the infrastructure. Month 2 is about building self-trust when you've spent years being told that your instincts are wrong. And now we are here. Month 3, getting underneath the patterns that have been running you. 1, I'm facilitating, so my eyes are going there. And 2, I have the window open. Anything's possible. Okay. There's this phenomenon called patterns, and they do not show up randomly. They were built by a younger version of you at specific moments in response to something perceived as real, enduring, and threatening. This week, we're going somewhere inside there. We're going to meet the part of you that actually believes the story underneath the pattern. So settle in. Let me get my coffee. I want you to think about a pattern that you have, not a cute quirk. One of those ones you're genuinely tired of, the one that shows up right when you're about to do something that matters, when you're about to trust your own read on something, when you are in the thick of an argument, when you're about to walk into leading a presentation to the C-suite, when you're about to say yes to the most you've ever spent on personal development. That's one of mine. For many of the women that I work with, and honestly for me too, this part can be one of the most exhausting ones in living with ADHD in a late diagnosis. Because you're not naive about the pattern, you have named it, you probably read about it, you can tell people about your pattern, you've had moments where you genuinely believed you'd handled it. And it just comes back wearing slightly different clothes every time. Firstly, the pattern is not a malfunction. It is a protection device. One that made complete sense in the moment in which it was built, like going completely blank when you heard your parents arguing, or becoming passive aggressive when you don't get what you want. A huge portion of the behavioral patterns late diagnosed ADHD women carry aren't just about regulation. They're also about masking, which we've gone over. They're about the protective adaptations we've built since we were kids, who had no idea that our brains worked differently. Kids who just knew something about how we move through the world kept getting us in trouble in some way, shape, or form. The pattern that looks like avoidance might have been self-preservation in a classroom that had no patience for how you processed. The pattern that looks like people-pleasing might have been the smartest survival strategy that was available to a kid whose emotional responses were consistently labeled as over the top, dramatic, too much. The pattern that looked like self-sabotage might have been a little girl who learned that if she didn't try too hard, failure was not really an option even. Those weren't wrong conclusions, they were survival conclusions. The problem is survival conclusions don't come with expiration dates. They just keep running long after the original context is gone, long after you've left the room, long after you technically grew up. This is what I lovingly call the radio station, the station we keep running that's fuzzy and choppy, maybe AM, yet takes up most of our subconscious space. Thus, we go underneath the mask, the protective adaptation, and aim to understand what it was even built on. Because with ADHD, masking and unmasking, most conversations about it stop at identification. Oh, I was masking. I mask in professional settings. It's useful, but it's still at the surface. You're just naming it, but what are you doing about it? The deeper work is asking, what story is this mask protecting? What did I believe about myself to make the mask feel necessary? The belief, that story, is where the pattern is running amok. Here's where I want you to bring a tool in. Personification. You probably remember that from like middle school English, giving human characteristics to something non-human. We do it naturally. How many of you have named a car, right? We name hurricanes, we apologize to furniture. I have full conversations with my car, Fern. Yes, Fern. And at this point, I've accepted it as part of the ecosystem of my home. It simply is what it is. We personify because it makes things relatable. And we can do the same thing with these internal patterns and beliefs underneath them. When a protective belief is just a diffuse, shapeless feeling, some version of this is just how I am, or I always do this, you can't actually get any more traction on it. But when you can locate it in time, give it a shape, understand the specific logic it was built from, and it has a name, suddenly you're not fighting a fog. You're in conversation with a part of yourself that's genuinely been trying to protect you. I use this image a lot, the difference between standing on the mossy forest ground versus getting up into the canopy. The mossy ground is fully inside the experience. You can't see past the tree directly in front of you. The canopy gives you enough height to see the whole landscape. You don't leave yourself, you just gain a vantage point. And from up here, compassion is a lot more accessible than critique. When it comes to ADHD women doing inner work, because we tend towards self criticism when patterns persist, the canopy view can interrupt that. The radio station shifting can interrupt that. It replaces judgment with curiosity, which is actually where sustainable change stems. So, your practice for this week, please actually do this in whatever format works for your brain. Notebook, notes app, voice memo, don't care. Get it out of your head and into something external. Think about a story that you carry. I'm not good enough. I never, right? One of the quiet foundational ones, the kind that doesn't announce itself as a belief, it just feels like the truth. It would be a consistent tendency in thinking, or begins with I should, I never, have to. And then ask yourself, how old were you when the story first formed? Not when you identified it intellectually, when it arrived as something that felt true, because something happened that made it feel necessary. Lower this. Who was there? What were the stakes? What did your body do? There may be a sensory detail attached, a smell, a sound, a physical feeling in your chest or throat. Just notice what's available without forcing anything. Then write the story of your protection mask, what it formed around, what it was trying to keep you safe from, what it has cost you, and what it has given you. And then give it a name, not a dismissive one. This part of you has been on duty for years, probably decades, running a protection strategy because she genuinely believed it was keeping you safe. She has earned some dignity before you ask her to stand down. And the final question is, and this is the one I like really to be sitting with, what did she need back then and what do I need now? Those two answers most likely will not match. The gap is what we're talking about. So if you are more visual and find a little support in show notes, what you're doing with this process is something foundational. You're getting curious about a part of yourself that has formed in response to something real. And you're finally bringing her enough light such that she can see that the situation has actually changed. That is how durable change works. Not through willpower applied against a pattern, through understanding that through an understanding that makes the old story genuinely less interesting than what is true now. It's possible. I'm telling you that it's possible. So give that a shot. There's some action in the show notes. I'll check you next week. Take really good care of yourself between now and then. And if you feel so bold, share in the comments what's the story that you're working on. What story comes to mind? Okay, give that a shot and subscribe if you have not. All right, ciao.